Welcome to Science Unit 1, Lesson 9, Research and Writing in Science. In this lesson, students will take their idea for a pamphlet and take it from the notes on their articles to a full-blown draft of their pamphlet. So the first thing that they will do is take notes on their research articles, and so we're going to read side 2 of that pamphlet on reading scientific articles from Lesson 8. Students will also learn the basics of APA style as their citations for their sources. And in Activity 1, they'll take notes over one of the articles for their project using the guiding questions and organizer in their academic notebook. So what do teachers need to know? Well, first, it's a good idea to discuss the purpose for reading. So for this particular assignment, they want to learn about the topic, they want to gather information for their pamphlet, and they want to understand the latest science, right? What are the new ideas and approaches? What does the latest data show us? And talk about how that purpose impacts their reading. So they're not trying to memorize every word. They're trying to get out the most important information that they can use for their pamphlet. So in this pamphlet of how to read a science article, there's 2 strategies that are discussed, taking notes in the margin and taking notes through summarization. And students will use both of these strategies as they take notes on the articles that they selected for their project. So in this part of the lesson, we're going to work through it step by step by step as they use each strategy in turn over one of the articles. So first they'll take notes in the margins of their text, and then they will use an organizer in their academic notebook to summarize their findings. So it's important for students to start out by taking notes in the margin of the article before they move to the organizer in the academic notebook. So in the academic notebook is sort of the record of everything that they need to remember from that article, but it's hard to know what that is as they're reading. So things like the citations can be put there in advance, right, sort of as they're going through the article, but that summary really needs to wait till the end so that they know what the article talked about, what was most important, and what they want to pull from the article. So students will begin by writing the citation in APA style, and in the lesson plan we have links to several sources that sort of gives a quick overview on APA for students, because our purpose here is not to have them learn APA style fully, but enough to use it as a bibliography at the end and as in the pamphlet itself as citations. So after they do APA style, move on to having students find the purpose of the article or the hypothesis of what the researchers were trying to find, what methods they used, what their data was, and so forth, as it's stated in that brochure on reading the science articles. Once students take notes over one article step by step with you and the class, then give them the rest of the time in class to continue working, because they'll need to have notes over all of their articles before the next class. In Activity 2, students should have notes over all their articles, and what they'll do is create an outline of their pamphlet. And so what you need to know is that students are going to need some guidance to take all this material and put it into a workable form for an outline. So in their academic notebook, the first thing that we ask them to do is review the notes that they took on their articles and just make a jot list of 5 to 7 key ideas that they want to be sure to use. And so for some students, it might be better for them to list a whole bunch of them and then either combine them or cross it out till they get to a manageable number. But in some way, they need to list what those main points that they want to make sure that they get in their pamphlet. And then ask students to look at the editing and revision checklist and the grading rubric as they work on their outline. So again, later on in this lesson, they're going to work together with peers to do some editing and revision. Well, before they even start writing, let's see what those points are. And let's look at the grading rubric so that as they work, they know exactly what they need to be doing. So for students, a good way to start the outline is to kind of make a bulleted list of the following points. So what's the description of the topic? What's the background information, the causes, the symptoms, the examples? What's the latest research? That's that 5 to 7 key ideas. Also, that's where they'd put the important data, figures, charts, whatever kind of graphic they're going to use in their final pamphlet. And they also need to have a call to action or recommendations or solutions for people reading the pamphlet. And then once students have an outline, ask them to share it with a partner and give each other feedback on where they think they are, just in sort of a jotted out list of the kinds of things they'll want to talk about. Once they have an outline, then they'll work on a draft of their pamphlet. And so what students will need to do is they'll write a draft of their pamphlet using the format described in the project directions in Lesson 8. And what you need to do is to remind students about how language is used in pamphlets. Maybe have those examples of pamphlets on hand so students can take a look at them and look back at the ways that people put information in the pamphlets in a visually appealing way, in a way that makes it easy to understand and yet still deals with complex science topics, and provide some class time for writing the draft. So remind students that pamphlets should explain the issue in ways that are easy to understand, add to a reader's knowledge about a topic. So it's not just a basic level look at any particular topic. It's a little bit in depth. People need to know more when they're finished reading the pamphlet than they knew going in. There should be some call to action, something that it asks the reader to do. Most people pick up a pamphlet because they want to find out what they can do, a call to action, a solution. It should use diagrams or illustrations, and it needs headings and subheadings to emphasize key points so that the reader is guided through the entire pamphlet. In a pamphlet, language is used in specialized ways. So they want to use scientific terms, but they want to be sure to define those terms for the reader. They want to use precise language, so avoid general nouns such as these, those, and they, and be very specific. Use the active voice. So that's different than how most scientific text is written, when they use passive voice. But a pamphlet wants a call to action, right? So it's an active kind of thing. And it avoids negative language. So instead of saying don't smoke, you'd say you should quit smoking. So putting things in the positive is important in a pamphlet as well. So once students have their draft, they're going to revise their draft using the guiding questions from their academic notebook, evaluating evidence, data, flow of information, and so on. And what teachers need to know is ask students to read their draft as they respond to the questions in the academic notebook, so that it's not just read over these questions. They do want to have a response to each one so that we know and they know that they've really thought through the answer to each one. And then have students discuss these responses in pairs, because before the next class they'll need to make the revisions to their draft to share out with peers. So they'll have an initial talk with peers to see what they think needs to be changed before the big peer edit in the next section. And in activity 4, this is where students will pair up and peer edit a classmate's pamphlet using the editing and revision checklist that's in the academic notebook. They'll also discuss their edits with a partner and revise their pamphlet based on this feedback. And so what do you need to do? Well, you need to remind students that they're going to swap papers. So they're actually going to let their paper leave their hands and have their partner have control over it to conduct the peer edit. And that the students are expected to read the pamphlet in depth. They're not skimming it and saying, oh yeah, this is all good. They are reading it and they're giving feedback using that editing and revision checklist that is in their academic notebook. So students should take turns discussing the feedback with their partner while looking at the grading rubric, so that each student has an understanding about what is working and what needs to be revised, so that when they leave that session, they know exactly what they need to do to finish up the project. In this lesson, students will also complete a weekly reflection where they'll think about the science, what did they learn about science research and about health disorders, and think about their learning. So how did this experience change the way they approach reading in the sciences? And for the next lesson, they'll be ready to go to actually present their pamphlets to the class.